Missiles fly, drones buzzing, sanctions stacking up like unpaid parking tickets, and three countries that seem permanently mad at each other. This rivalry didn't start last year, or even the last decade, because believe it or not, there was actually a time when Iran and the United States were allies, and Iran and Israel quietly cooperated behind the scenes. So how did we go from friendly handshakes to one of the most dangerous rivalries in modern geopolitics? Well, the story begins with something that has started more global drama than almost anything else in history: oil. Yes, the same thing that makes your gas prices feel like a jump scare. Let's rewind to the early 1950s. Iran had a prime minister named Mohammad Mossadegh, and he had a pretty radical idea. Not radical today, but at the time, absolutely wild. Mossadegh believed Iran should control its own oil. Crazy concept, right? At the time, most of Iran's oil industry was controlled by British interests, especially a company called the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. So in 1951, Mossadegh did something bold. He nationalized the oil industry, meaning he basically said, "Hey, the oil in Iran belongs to Iran." Seems reasonable, but the British government looked at that decision and said something along the lines of, "Yeah, we're gonna strongly disagree with that." Because losing Iranian oil wasn't just annoying, it was an economic disaster for Britain. So British officials began searching for a way to remove Mossadegh from power, and eventually they found someone willing to help. The United States, British intelligence, and the CIA teamed up in what became known as the 1953 Iranian Coup. The result? Mossadegh was removed from power, put on trial, sentenced to prison, and later placed under house arrest for the rest of his life. And in his place, Iran's monarch returned to full authority. Enter Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. Now here's where things get interesting, because the Shah was very pro-Western, which meant Iran suddenly became a close partner of the United States during the Cold War, and from Washington's perspective, Iran was basically the perfect ally. Let's check the list. Strategic locations near the Soviet Union? Check. Huge oil reserves? Check. Anti-communist government? Check. From the US perspective, it was like, you like Western technology, hate communism, and sell oil? Yeah, we're definitely BFFs. In Cold War terms, that was basically a perfect 5-star review. So the United States poured investment into Iran. Iran bought American weapons, Western companies moved in, and American advisors helped modernize Iran's military and economy. By the 1960s and 70s, Tehran was becoming one of the most modern cities in the Middle East. Highways, universities, major infrastructure. It looked like modernization was working. But there was just one problem. Actually, several problems. Because rapid modernization often creates winners and losers. And in Iran, wealth and power were increasingly concentrated among elites connected to the royal court, which meant many ordinary Iranians started feeling like their country was modernizing, but not for them. On top of that, Western companies and advisors were everywhere, and some Iranians began feeling like their country was slowly becoming too influenced by outsiders. So, resentment began building, and eventually, it exploded. By the late 1970s, frustration with the Shah had spread across Iran. Students, workers, religious leaders, ordinary citizens, everyone seemed to have a complaint. Protests began appearing in cities, at first small, then bigger, then massive. Soon, millions of people were taking to the streets, and suddenly, the Shah had a serious problem. Not only were protests growing, he was losing support. So in January 1979, the Shah made a decision. He left Iran. Technically, it was supposed to be temporary. Kind of like when someone says, "I'm just stepping out for a minute," and then never comes back. Because the Shah never returned. Instead, crowds flooded the streets to welcome back a man who had been living in exile, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. Khomeini had spent years criticizing the monarchy and calling for an Islamic government. Now he was returning to lead a revolution, and within weeks, the monarchy collapsed. Iran became the Islamic government of Iran, a government ruled not by a king, but by religious leadership. And this new government had a very clear message: no more monarchy, and no more foreign influence, which meant Iran's relationship with the United States changed overnight, and not in a good way. In November 1979, something happened that shocked the world. A group of Iranian students stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran. Now, normally embassies are pretty boring places. Diplomats drink coffee, write careful letters, and argue politely about international policy. They are not usually places where global crises begin. But this time, they did. The students seized the building and captured 52 American diplomats and staff members. What started as a protest turned into a full-blown international crisis. The hostages were held for 444 days. Back in the United States, it became nightly news. Every update was the same. The hostages were still there, still waiting, still trapped. At one point, the United States even attempted a rescue mission involving helicopters, special forces, and a complicated plan that looked like something straight out of a movie. Unfortunately, the mission failed in the Iranian desert before it even reached Tehran. Meanwhile, inside Iran, many supporters of the revolution saw the embassy take over differently. To them, it symbolized Iran standing up to a global superpower. Eventually, negotiations led to the Algiers Accords, which secured the release of the hostages. They were freed on January 20, 1981, the exact same day Ronald Reagan was sworn in as president. Coincidence? Depends who you ask. But the damage was already done. Diplomatic relations between the United States and Iran were completely cut off, and they still haven't been fully restored. Now here's something most people don't realize. Before 1979, Iran and Israel were not enemies. In fact, they quietly cooperated. Both countries shared concerns about Arab nationalism and regional instability. So behind the scenes, they maintained communication, trade, and coordination. It wasn't a flashy alliance. You weren't going to see joint parades or friendship bracelets, but they worked together. It was less best friends forever and more, we'll quietly help each other and not make it weird. Then the revolution happened, and the new Iranian leadership had a completely different view of Israel. They believed Israel was occupying Palestinian land and acting as a Western foothold in the region, so the quiet cooperation ended instantly, and tensions skyrocketed. But interestingly, they didn't immediately go to war, because there was one big logistical problem. Geography. Iran and Israel don't share a border. They're separated by over 1,000 kilometers. Launching a full-scale war across that distance isn't exactly easy. So instead, they started fighting a shadow war. A shadow war is basically conflict without official war. Instead of armies clashing directly, countries fight through proxies, and Iran began supporting groups that oppose Israel. The most famous example is Hezbollah in Lebanon. Iran also backed Palestinian groups like Hamas. These groups received funding, training, and weapons, and they became some of Israel's most persistent rivals. Israel, of course, did not sit quietly and accept this. Over the years, Israel carried out airstrikes targeting Iranian weapons shipments and militias in places like Syria. There were also covert operations against Iranian facilities and commanders. So instead of one giant war, it became a long, complicated chess match. Except that chessboard was the Middle East, and the pieces occasionally exploded, which is definitely not how chess normally works, unless you're playing with fireworks. And throughout all of this, the United States kept getting pulled into the situation, because when Iranian-backed groups attacked Israel or targeted American forces in the region, Washington responded, sometimes with military support, sometimes with direct strikes. And then another issue entered the story, one that made everything even more tense. Iran has long maintained that its nuclear program is for peaceful purposes: energy, scientific research, medical technology. From Iran's perspective, many countries have nuclear programs, so they argue they have the right to pursue one as well. But Israel and the United States are deeply skeptical, because nuclear technology used for energy can also be adapted into nuclear weapons. And the possibility of a nuclear-armed Iran is something both countries view as a major security threat. So tensions rose again, sanctions were imposed, negotiations began, international inspectors monitored facilities. There were agreements designed to limit nuclear development, but behind the diplomacy, the shadow war never stopped. There were cyber attacks, drone strikes, covert operations, and the occasional mysterious explosion at sensitive facilities. Officially, no one was responsible. Unofficially, everyone had their suspicions. But Iran's rivalry wasn't limited to Israel. There was another major competitor in the region, Saudi Arabia. Now on paper, both Iran and Saudi Arabia are Muslim-majority countries, so you might assume they'd get along. But geopolitics is rarely that simple. Because their rivalry is about more than religion, it's about power and influence. Iran positions itself as a leading Shia power. Saudi Arabia sees itself as a major Sunni leader. Both countries have spent decades competing to shape the future of the Middle East. But once again, they rarely fought directly. Instead, the rivalry played out through other conflicts. In Syria, Iran supported the government of Bashar al-Assad. Saudi Arabia supported some rebel groups. In Yemen, Saudi Arabia backed the Yemeni government. Iran was widely accused of supporting the Houthi movement. So if the Middle East sometimes feels like an extremely complicated board game, that's because in many ways, it is. Except the rules keep changing and half the players brought their own pieces. And lately, some of the players have started flipping the board. In recent years, the shadow war has started looking a lot more like a real one. Strikes and counterstrikes have become more direct. The United States and Israel have launched operations targeting Iranian military infrastructure. Iran responded with missiles and drones. Some targeted Israel directly. Others struck U.S. military facilities and allied bases in Gulf countries. Iran-aligned groups also joined the fighting. Hezbollah launched attacks from Lebanon into northern Israel. Israel responded with airstrikes, and suddenly a conflict that had simmered for decades looked dangerously close to expanding, which raises an important question. Why should the rest of the world care? The answer is actually pretty simple. Global energy. A huge portion of the world's oil passes through a narrow waterway near Iran called the Strait of Hormuz. And when tensions rise there, shipping companies get nervous, oil prices jump, and suddenly everyone's gas bill starts looking a little more personal. And the ripple effects can hit economies all over the world. So while this conflict might look like a regional rivalry, its consequences can spread far beyond the Middle East. And that's a long story behind why the United States, Israel, and Iran keep clashing today. It's a story that stretches back decades. From oil politics, to revolutions, to hostage crises, to shadow wars and nuclear tensions. Which means this rivalry didn't appear overnight, and judging by how things are unfolding lately, it's a story that's far from over. Unfortunately, international politics rarely gets a clean season finale. To scratch your history itch, check out one of these videos.